Hey guys, today we are going to talk about 5 mistakes that beginners make, and we're going to show you how to fix them, what to do and what not to do. So let's go.
All right, as we hop in, we are going to get all set up first. So I'm going to take you guys with me. Let's go prep some clay. And I feel like I don't show off the studio enough, so let's just do a little walkthrough of the studio. We have our pug mill back here, and this thing is absolutely amazing. I love the Bailey pug mills. I kind of like the next stage would be a Peter Pugger where we don't have to recycle, it can all just go in, but this is where we're at, and it's great for now. So the very first thing that we're going to talk about that is a big beginner mistake is actually centering. So centering is very, very important, and I feel like a lot of people end up messing it up. The one thing that I see a lot is people take their hands off too fast. So if you take your hands off both at the same time, you will end up knocking the balance off. So you really want to imply and implement the one hand off at a time. So we're centering, we've got both hands on the pot and our elbows are down, and then all of a sudden both hands off. You just knocked it out of place. Even though we're not centered quite yet, you're already starting off in a poor position. You see how it wobbles when I let go like that? We really want to make sure we are letting go one hand off at a time and keeping our hands clean. You guys see me wiping my hands constantly. Our elbows are down. We're using our full body. So I'm leaning over this clay. I'm not trying to do it just by my forearms or by my fingers. It is my full body doing the whole thing. And then as we get to that top, one hand off at a time. And that's really going to save you. So wiping our hands, keeping it clean, going down and back up. And I just want to show you how it looks when you take them both off. And you can really see it wobbling, like it's going. And then you have to restart all over again, and then you end up overworking the clay, and your clay ends up tearing, and it's not a fun situation when clay is expensive and life is expensive, and we don't want to waste anything. So really making sure one hand off at a time. The next thing that I see is that people do this cone, and that is exactly what happens. It ends up tearing right off. So if you are coning up too high and you have this tall little skinny thing, I always tell everybody we don't want inflatable tube men, and we want traffic cones. So that is what happens when you have an inflatable tube man. I'm just going to replay that one little line right here so you guys can see that again. We're going full slow-mo so you can see that I didn't edit this at all, and I didn't attempt to make it this way. It just tore because it got too overworked and the clay didn't have enough elasticity to actually be able to handle being coned up that high. So you can really see right here, it just starts tearing and then it rips the whole thing right off. And this is why I tell people we don't want an inflatable tube man. So when centering, let's just go over how to do our placement for our hands real fast. We want our left hand, we're going to be using our palm, and then our right hand, we're going to be using our fingertips. Our hands are always touching, and my elbows are always down. My left hand palm is pushing pretty hard, and then my right hand fingertips are pulling in. And we are coning up, our hands are physically moving upwards, and then we're keeping that same placement to push it back down. So up and down until you're fully centered, just like that. The next thing that we're going to talk about is compressing. So I'm not going over every single step of how to do pottery, but I'm just going over things that a lot of people miss when you're newer to the pottery world and you're just entering in. So it is a controversial thing in the pottery world, but compressing, especially if you're making plates, you really need a flat, even bottom. Whether it's controversial or not, that is what makes your cracks happen. So it's really important to make sure the bottom of your pieces are flat and even, and that will help prevent S-cracks. That will help prevent, cracks around the rim of your piece at the very bottom. It helps just prevent so many cracks. So when you're new, always check your thickness. Once you get a little bit more advanced, you don't really have to because you already know the feel. But I really do want to show the compression part of this. So I compress every single piece. There's times where if I don't, no, I just do. There is no don't. I'm one of the ones that firmly believe that this has saved me from making it so many mistakes. So we're just going right past that middle and back, right past that middle and back. Show you with my fingers so you can really see it. 2 fingers on top of each other, and I'm starting where my wall meets my floor, right at that 3 o'clock, and right past that middle and straight back. I'm not making little circles all over the place. My hands are going back and forth like I have an invisible string pulling me back to that starting point. And I'm not going all the way across the whole pot. We're cutting this baby in half because the wheel is doing the work. We don't need to go all the way to the other half, just like a circle. But that is something that I truly do believe in. Whether you do or don't, really just make sure your bottoms of your pieces are flat and you won't have problems there. The next thing, I'm not going to really go over too much on how to do pulls. It's more of people don't start at the bottom when they're pulling their pots. So when you're doing your pulls, really try to make sure that you're starting at the bottom and you're regrouping the rim and then starting at the bottom again. Before we even get to that though, I really want to stress that you should be working on the right side of your clay at all times. So my fingertips are always touching. I'm always starting at the bottom and I am on. If you pretend like your pot is a clock, this is going to be like your 4 o'clock. Okay, we are not working on our left side. We will be going against the wheel and you will struggle, you guys, you will struggle. I teach my lefties and my righties the exact same. I have corrected so many left-handed people because they think it's easier to swap, and I have done private lessons with them, had them throwing like this, and now they can create and actually create things instead of struggling and hating pottery. So just a little tidbit, if you are a lefty, I do teach the exact same way. Now we are starting all the way at the bottom and going all the way to the top. And then once we get all the way to the top, we want to regroup. So one thing that does happen a lot, and I'm kind of showing you here, I'll zoom in so you can really see it. What a lot of new people do is they go really, really light at the bottom and then they pinch at the top. So they get kind of pinchy fingers because their distance between each finger is not consistent through the whole piece. And it just takes time to really learn and get the feel of it. But they get all the way to the top and then they pinch really heavy at that top and it makes the rim really thin. And then they don't compress it down to fix it. With that same thing being said, a lot of people when they're new, they don't really know the right pull time frame. So what they end up doing is this, where they end up pulling their fingers up really, really fast and they get these twists. And if you're going for a twisty look, it's great and that's perfect. But if you are trying to actually get pulls without this getting too thin in spots, that's not going to work. So you really need either your wheel to go faster and your hands to go slower, or your hands to just go slower. And that is going to correct that little twisty motion that we really don't want to see here. And now that I did that, you'll be able to see thin spots. We're going to really overwork this clay. This clay is not going anywhere, but you want to make sure it goes in that full circle before you do another lift. So let's do it again so I can really show you. We're really focusing on keeping our fingers the same and our hands are going really slow. We're not pinching at the top. And because I've been messing with this, it's kind of flailed out a little bit. I'm going to just color this in just for this video so I have a little bit more clay to work with so I can really keep showing you what to do here. So I'm coloring in and it's going to really mess up this piece and it's going to be really uneven now. I'm going to do a little correcting pull. Anytime I color in, I always do a correcting pull just to try to get it all back to the same, distance around so it's not as wobbly. And that's going to help us out a little bit. So there is that. So we really want to make sure our pulls are even and your hands aren't going too fast. That is one of the biggest things that I see beginners do quite often. So let's get this guy a little bit taller so I can show you what is the next thing that we see a lot when you are brand new. And it's a really easy fix. So earlier in this video, I mentioned that you really want to start all the way at the bottom and work your way to the top. That is so insanely true with every single piece. I don't care what you're making. All of the clay is at the bottom. So if you start in the middle, you're just thinning out your piece and you're making it more susceptible to falling over. So we're going to get this a little bit taller and I'm going to show you what a lot of people do. You can actually see the thickness at the base where I have more clay that I can pull up. And we really want to focus on that, starting all the way at the bottom, pulling all the way to the top, regrouping our rim, getting the water out, and I don't swipe my pots. I don't know if it's the mom in me or the millennial in me. I'm not really sure, but I say swipe or no swiping because I grew up with Dora the Explorer. So it's all swipe or no swiping. You don't want to swipe your pots because it just causes little thin spots. And we don't want that. So as you can see, I'm going all the way to that top. And now this is what I see a lot of people do. They start right at like the bottom middle and they go all the way to the top. And then they go right to that bottom middle again. And then all the way to the top. We're not compressing. We're just thinning. And you can start seeing now it's starting to twist. It means we are too thin in that middle. And this is where it usually collapses. So we want to make sure we're actually pulling all the way from the bottom. So let's fix this. Let's go all the way to the bottom so you can really see. I'm trying to show you all the thickness here.
And then they start around here and they get really, really thin, and they just keep moving their hands up and down like this. And they're not actually making that pull. So it's more like a stair-stepper motion all the way up to the top. It is just a thin, and they let go too fast. So we want to avoid that. And we need this weight down here. So you want to make sure you're scooping that clay up and actually pulling that clay all the way to the top, regrouping and making sure that you are actually compressing the top of that rim and then one hand off at a time. And then you won't have this weird little wonky pot.
Now, VoiceOver Rose is back, and I had this little extra that flew off because we made an inflatable tube man, and I just wanted to see if I could make a little fun pot out of it. So, you can always, we don't want to waste anything, so why not? I already wasted the pot earlier because I was showing everybody how to throw and different mistakes that everybody makes. But just to kind of go over and recap, all of those things were just little things that I see constantly in everyday studio life. And it's little things that I'm constantly telling people over and over and over again to fix. Once you get those done and you fix those little mistakes, you are going to grow so much as a potter. It's insane. Those little things can be so helpful. And then you overcome so many little things that are challenging that now you can actually challenge yourself in different ways as a potter. And it's really cool. So I hope this helped, and I hope to see what you guys create. And if you guys are just moving your hands up and down on a pottery piece, that stops today because that's not how this is going to go, and you're not going to see growth if that's how you're, throwing your pots.
Okay, let's cut this so you can actually see what it looks like on the inside. Go right to the middle and pull straight up. This. So, if we were trimming it, get these guys off, and we're a little bit thick here, but the walls themselves are pretty solid. pretty even here. When you're pulling, you really want to get that base here, and you're making that little stair step movement, so you're actually physically pulling that up. Consistency all the way to the top. Okay. And okay, so we went over how to center properly when you are going down in our like little hockey puck. We also went over how to compress properly and why compressing is actually important. And then we are going to talk about really making sure when in this, I can't talk, okay. And then we really went over like making sure to grab that bottom of the clay. That's where a lot of beginners leave that really heavy bottom. You really have so much to work with, so really scooping that up and pulling that up and using that to your advantage. So instead of, you know, if you start with 1.5 pounds, you can actually use all that 1.5 pounds to your advantage. And you end up with beautiful vessels because you're using all the clay that you have, and way lighter vessels. So you're not like, when you grab it, you're not like, whew, that was heavy. So, and we went over making sure to pull not from the middle, but from the bottom. And so we're not pulling too thin. We see a lot of people when they first start and they just kind of caress the whole pot and they think they're pulling, but they're not actually scooping anything. They're just kind of rubbing one side, and it's not doing you justice, okay? So we really want you to really practice actually doing a full pull from the bottom all the way to the top, one hand off at a time, regroup, which is like a recompressing that rim, and then starting all the way at the bottom again. You never want to start all the way to the top and then work your way down. We don't ever want to see that. You always want to go from the bottom to the top, from the bottom to the top. So I hope this helped you guys, and I can't wait to see what you guys make. Make sure to tag us. We do have our Instagram at the Potter's Peak, and we love seeing your guys' creations. So if you made something, or say you've been struggling with something for a very long time, let us know. We do read those, and we love hearing about them, and we love hearing your guys' success stories. That's literally why we have this channel. So excited to see everything.